Okay. Here I am. I'm back. It's 1:50 in the morning, Thursday, February 24th, 2022, East Coast of New Jersey in the United States. So, we know what just happened moments ago, basically. Earlier, what happened with Russia invading Ukraine earlier. I don't know. I just can't talk. So anyway, let me start this over. Okay, this is like an emergency kind of broadcast, if you will. As you could see, I'm talking slowly here because it's just insane what's happening right now. There's no words for it. It leaves you exasperated and breathless, especially with relating to Bible prophecy and Jesus' imminent coming for believers to take them out of here, out of this craziness, this mess, this world. Now, again, I'm trying to catch my breath here because it's just very saddening, very insane, horrifying what's happening here, but it's right out of Scripture. We're living it right this moment, and Jesus is about to appear to take believers. And I was listening to a video earlier in the day, and the person said, we may not even be here by the weekend. It really struck me. That could very much be true regarding what's going on right at this moment in so many different ways. If you want to stay with me here, I'm taking my time. I'm catching my breath because I want to go over a lot of things and really actually what is going on here, the overall scene, the prophetic scene, the geopolitical situation, economic. Let me just start there for a second. I'm going to flip around to different areas. The futures markets of the world right now seem like they're in tumbling and in turmoil. So there's so many aspects of this. That's one that I just popped into my mind that I want to talk about here. This whole thing, what is happening, so many different ways that you might not think about, so many areas, so many possibilities, so much, things could happen here with so many different countries, so many tyrants, ready to do other things, to start other trouble with the U.S. and the world. So we have this developing with the stock markets, the financial system, could potentially collapse if this escalates, and it seems like it's just, it's going to. This is just the start of it, and seemed like a major onslaught. I'm hearing horrifying reports of bodies of soldiers from air attacks, whatever else is going on, missiles. So this is pure evil, purely evil. The pretentious Putin, with his so-called issue with Ukraine, potentially wanting to join NATO. Well, they didn't join yet, did they, Mr. Putin? Yet you still attack them. They didn't join anything that would necessitate your evil. Not that he's going to be listening, of course, but I'm just speaking like this, because that reminds me of the verses in Ezekiel where God himself is against you, is against him, referring to Gog, the leader of Magog, which refers obviously and directly to Russia and to the leader of Russia. So God is against you, God is against him, all right? So I'm going to try to just relax here a little bit. My microphone sound may be a little off because I've been messing around with the settings and having issues, so it may seem a little like echoing and kind of hard to listen to, like harsh a little bit. Not a nice smooth sound, but anyway, that's irrelevant. But so this this is happening right out of the Bible, right before our eyes. This, I believe 100%, is the start of the war of Magog, or Russia. Now, what's the purpose of this? This has nothing to do with anyone joining NATO. This has to do with attacking Israel. That's the goal. Annihilating and destroying Israel and coming against them. And God even said, prophesied through Ezekiel, what is the purpose? It's to come and take a spoil. So that's the thing. And it could be oil, it could be anything, economically, control over the whole world. God said he'll put hooks in his mouth and pull or cause them, God isn't doing that. He's not doing the evil, but he's luring, this plan so that he could protect and, destroy the enemies of Israel. That's what's going on here. This is the ultimate and, possibly quick thing that could develop here. Whether this tomorrow you're going to hear maybe, things calm down and they're going to assess, what actually took place. But again, we don't know. Like I said in the last video, last night, I said you could wake up in the morning and everything that I said, which I'm repeating here, could be happening. So here I am the very next day. It didn't happen in the morning. Again, I'm all messed up with the time, but let me speak about it's still Wednesday. Let me leave it at that, even though it's I'm doing this into the morning, early morning hours, into Thursday. But so it happened, let's call it late at night, Wednesday, okay, during the day. So this came about. Now, again, there's a lot of things I want to cover here, a lot of very important things. And again, I'm going to be switching around to what I'm saying. Another thing that popped into my mind, I just read a comment on one of these chats where, I don't know, I can't confirm this, but it said that China just announced an hour ago, I don't know when this came out, but probably not that long ago, tonight, in the night, China just announced that, I don't know if it's going to require Taiwan or take Taiwan or is claiming Taiwan. So, okay, this is another thing. I really expected something like this. I've expected, or can expect, I've felt many of the different things that I'm about to tell you here in the development of all of this, if and when this started, and it has started. So that's another thing that might seem like a surprise. Why did this happen? Well, it's taking advantage of what's happening in the world, and all the eyes are drawn elsewhere. So opportunistic countries such as China, with the issue of almost creating war, tension of war, even with the U.S. and other countries over this issue of maybe they would attack Taiwan to take it over, in the same way, claiming that country as their own. So that's another development here. All right, so we have that, and let's go up north. Okay, let's go to Korea. Let's go to North and South Korea. We know the tensions and all the problems there with the dictator there, and all the problems, and doing ballistic tests, and really threatening even the U.S. And apparently he has the capability of reaching the western coast of the U.S. All right, so we have this issue. This is sort of another thing off in the side right now, that there's nothing happening as far as I know, but I'm saying this is another sort of thing that could come into reality here, or another problem that could develop in all of this to take advantage of all that's happening, all right, in the world right now, with all the eyes and the countries focused on Russia and their invasion of Ukraine, of a sovereign country. So I'm going to eventually and shortly discuss how not only these two, concerns or potentials might, develop in the world with this overall, I don't know, it's being called the World War. That's basically what it is, the start of the Third World War. And so also what I'm trying to say is the United States, what could happen here, what could happen to this country, possible attacks or possible war right on the American soil, as insane as that could sound, is very, very possible, and could even be an outcome as this develops, all right, as all this develops. Okay, now I want to jump over to the Middle East with Israel. Israel, that's the main thing of what's going on here. This is all about Israel. The ultimate thing behind all of this is just like a giant mastermind of evil, a chess game to eventually attack Israel, and all the prophecies relating to Israel. And it's tying right into prophecy here now, the rapture first. This is going to happen, I believe, any second. Literally any second here we could be gone. And then the start of this time period called the time of Jacob's trouble, right out of Scripture, the Hebrew prophets, and this developing continuation of this start of this Third World War in a worldly term, but biblically the war of Gog and Magog to come against Israel. Now, and then let me mention the overall thing of the Middle East there, not just Russia, all the countries, the Islamic countries that are totally surrounding the small area of Israel, which is approximately the same size as New Jersey, here in New Jersey where I live. So Israel is approximately the size of New Jersey where I live, so I can relate to that. So Israel is surrounded by enemies, mortal enemies bent on its annihilation and destruction, to take over that land and reclaim it, both from a religious standpoint, and basically that's the main thing there. So that's going on. Israel is surrounded, all right? It's always been surrounded, but it is at peace. It is living independently, and its own people protection, has the capability, strong defensive ability, capability, and military ability, and technologically, and every other way. It's a major, modern miracle, call it that, agriculturally, and really every other way. And Israel and the Jewish people are the center of all this, prophetically, with Scripture, what's ready to be fulfilled to happen. Israel, once the church is gone, is the center stage of everything, spiritually, economically, politically. that will take place, and the reasons why this will take place. Also, because it will be a time of God's judgment once the believers are gone upon earth, and all the calamities that that will result. But God will protect, ultimately keep Israel together, though there will be major, I don't know how else to put it, most of it won't survive, all right, putting it bluntly, but there will be a remnant that God will protect, that will last and keep through this time period until Jesus returns, openly to the world after this 7-year period. But this is after both the rapture, if you've not heard this before, the rapture, which is coming very, very shortly here. And then again, there will be a 7-year period called the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob, right from the Bible. So, and then at the end of the 7 years, Jesus will return with the believers, and the final week or period that God has reserved to fulfill, his plan and purpose with Israel, who rejected Jesus, the Messiah, the first time. But that will come to its end, and then all of this insanity will end, and Jesus will be here. The earth will be cleansed of all this evil, all this trouble, and basically become a paradise, or what's called the millennium, which means 1,000 years, where Jesus will physically actually be here on earth to rule and reign the whole world with the believers. And Israel will continue to exist, but we'll have to go through this, and this is what it's all about. So, all right, my next point, again, about Israel. There's talk that, like I said in the last video, that Israel said that if Russia goes and invades Ukraine, that Israel will take the side of NATO, okay? And I'll get to what that means. It's not just like they're going to be joining the club, like they're just going to be a part of this force against Russia, but there's much more meaning to that, because Israel is of itself, it's more or less isolated and has to fend for itself in many ways in what I believe is about to happen, and is a tiny nation and just surrounded by these giant countries, foaming at the mouth basically to come against them at the opportune time. And I believe once this situation heads toward Israel, and I have to qualify that, and I don't want to make this confusing, but that situation is all set to go. It may not seem like that. You don't have to wait for like this to happen and that to happen, and Russia to show it's moving troops down this way and it's going to take this much time, or this is going to happen. These other countries are involved in what's going on behind the scenes, like with Iran particularly. And then getting back to Syria, all right? Getting back to Syria. Here's a major point. I didn't mention this last night, and how this all ties in. Now, Syria, if you're not familiar with the Middle East, there is borders right to the north of Israel with it's Lebanon, but it's like the last country, the last peg to fall, the last piece that stands in the way, if you want to word it that way, between a Russian invasion to come through Syria. So, but there's still conflicts and issues and things going on there where Israel, now again, I'm not an expert, haven't been following this really. I don't really follow. I mean, I hear it, and obviously I'm interested in prophecy. But anyway, Israel has been going on with conflicts of protecting itself and having to defend itself, and then with regard to Syria, because there's, things going on with being attacked or that they're threatened and so on. And so that the stage has been going on. The stage has been set where this has been going on, attack, and then Israel would respond and so on. And so what? All right. The point is that Russia was upset because they said that if Israel, whatever they are planning to do or are going to do, or whatever you want to term it, with regard to Syria, like if Israel starts, attacking or whatever, destroying for whatever reason, that Russia is saying that they're not going to stand for it. They're not going to stand for it. They're going to finally put their foot down, whatever that means. That's like another stage to this, because there's been Russian collusion and infiltration and stronghold in Syria with factions and backing of Russia, and also with Iran, which is up there to the west and north, to the east and northeast of Israel, and borders right there with Syria. So that's what's going on there. Syria is like the last peg, the last piece, the last impediment toward a total, push down into Israel to come in there to go against Israel and actually invade Israel, with all those countries, all of them trying to, come in there and totally annihilate them. So that's what's going on here. So I said in the last video to look for possible developments with Israel and Syria. So, I mean, there could be, what's the word, antagonization or whatever from Syria and from Russia and from Iran, in Syria, of Syria, toward Israel, but it looks like it's just Syria against Israel and going back and forth. And so the point is, if this escalates to that point, now it's like really tension there between Syria, Israel, and Russia, because Russia is saying, if something happens in Syria, we're not going to stand by anymore. We're, basically saying Russia is going to move, and, you're going to have to face Big Daddy now, not just, stand by. They're not going to just sort of stand by and let it happen. And, even though they've been working behind the scenes to support, apparently against Israel, but sort of in the shadows kind of thing. And that's what's going on, I guess, basically right here now. It's like they seem to be innocent, like in the shadows, but really country after country right at this moment quickly is being sort of toppled over, or penetrated, or controlled, moving in. Belarus, I mentioned them, that's to the north of Ukraine there, and there's even talk right now that they're immediately, it's like to the north where Poland is, it's like apparently Russia, the troops are right there on the border, right on the brink of Poland. So surprise, surprise, if this escalates like this, then you're going to have problems with Russia and Poland Okay, and then you go over to the east, and now you have Germany. How are they going to react, and for what reasons? So it's like a cancer that just keeps growing, but a quick cancer that's trying to move its way quickly through. It's not the body, human body, but through countries geopolitically to just sort of a silent coup kind of thing. Where it's like, what are you talking about? We're not doing anything. We're just being peaceful. We're just asked to be here, or we're doing military drills. And yeah, military drills. That's like with Belarus. It's always that can always be a pretext or an excuse. Anytime a country says that it's just military exercises, and really through the whole world, the troops of basically all the countries have participated in these so-called military exercises. It seems crazy if you think about it. Even in the U.S., any kind of foreign country, major countries participating in military exercises, in this country or any other country. So there's troops of all different races and, nationalities occupying and doing drills, and if you know what I'm saying. Also under the idea of security and defense of other nations, and being allowed to station there or whatever. Take Taiwan, for instance, being a defensive influence and protection for certain countries that are small, that need protection against larger perpetrators. So that situation with Russia being irate and upset, if from Israel declaring that it's going to join NATO, and also because if it does anything, towards Syria, now it's going to put its foot down, and really Israel is going to be facing pretty much, though in an indirect way, though there's a lot to this, what that means, but indirectly facing Russia behind the scenes, because Israel, they have to defend and keep a distance of what's happening in Syria, so that there's not the ability to attack them, so that they're not, the forces or whatever capabilities to strike them and hit them and cause casualties and damage, is kept at a safe and proper distance. Otherwise, it's right. They're right at the border, and it could just, they could come right in, if you know what I'm saying. All right, so now let's look at this also with the other countries surrounding, like I said, who are oppositional and, want to go against Israel, that surround Israel. So what are they up to? I mean, I don't know, because I'm not really following and listening to all of this, but what are they doing? In other words, are they preparing? Obviously, all those countries know what's going on, although you might not hear about it. They obviously must be in preparation for what they expect to happen, and to take the side of Russia. So that's sort of like a blind spot. You might not even think that that's going on, that there's nothing happening, or any influence or need to be concerned. This is another issue, because very quickly this could develop. If these countries then suddenly get involved, this could blow up into a major issue here, involving all the countries and the whole world. It is involving the whole world now, but it's not at a nuclear stage, or it's not involving direct actions of NATO, of the United States, of Great Britain, and other allies, European allies. But there has to be some response. There has to be some reaction, some protection, some something to stop this. There has to be. Otherwise, if there isn't, then what's the alternative? Again, Israel is on its own, all right? And if other countries are taken out and neutralized in some way, if this becomes, gets out of hand, then you have major problems, not only with the ability of their armies, to stay, to even exist, or to have many, to be many anymore. How else do I put it? And also things going on that could happen in this country again if there's an attack, all right? Because if no one stops them now, then no one will be able to. Definitely will not be able to, except if it goes ballistic. But then, that's nobody really wins. There's total carnage everywhere. And as I said, who would protect Israel? They'd have to protect themselves. God is going to protect them, yes, but also militarily, you need the muscle and the power to do that. So if there's an invasion by Russia into Syria, to move through there, then guess what? Look who's your new neighbor, and it's Russia. Within feet, right on the border, would be Russia, Russian soldiers, Russian military, and everything else, all their artillery and weaponry, right at the border of Israel. Israel will not allow that because they know that it's just they could be annihilated, and it's right there. The next step is to just go and enter Israel, and right on their soil, a major conflict. So if all the other surrounding countries suddenly go up in arms and become a part of this and go after Israel along with Russia, then there's a giant force against them, forces, and that's what's happening here. And it's not far off. It could flare up to this, and at any time during this, really, at any time. And then again, it's also the perfect opportunity and time to invade the United States. So that that would be a perfect time. And then again, I said with North Korea and China from off the west coast of the United States, from overseas, over the Pacific, there they are, and that could be a way of attack. And then, of course, you have Russia to the north in the Pacific up there, right bordering with Alaska, territory of the United States, far to the north, and can head right down through there. And there can be movement from the north through Canada into the United States, offshore. We know, subs or submarines and ships and what have you, and air, sea. There's all kinds of obviously weapons, and more sophisticated and technologically, and satellite, and all kinds of different things that that could be used now in combat or war situations. Tsunamis can be artificially created. Earthquakes can be artificially created. Fires, weather. So you name it, it's really endless. What's at the disposal and such for such reasons. And then you have the presence in Venezuela, just to the south of the United States. In South America, with the Russian presence there, and that's, basically hostile and a base area, you know, and to go up through the south. So, like I just said, it could come in from every direction. Also, of course, Russia could come in from the other direction, from the east, also, because they have such a large, vast area, and they could go through the north, heading, towards the United States from the opposite direction, and through the seas also, or the air, or whatever. So, I mean, if this escalates, that could easily happen, and probably is likely to, because the United States will be at war, technically, not just technically, but has to be, to stop this. You know, with Russia, and again with all the Middle Eastern countries, and those countries who desire to annihilate Israel, they have the same hatred toward the United States, and want that to happen also. I mean, plus whatever we don't know about who or what exists in the United States right now, sort of mercenaries or UN or whatever that are already here. And I forgot to mention Canada, to the north. I mentioned Canada from all the way from the west, all the way, from Canada on the west coast kind of thing. But also like Montreal up, north of New York City, that kind of area to launch invasion. And there's been reports for years now that there's many Chinese troops up there for so-called training, but they're apparently still there. Again, it's been a permanent thing, so there's many troops there. What are they doing there? And also, I think reports similarly, south of Texas on the Mexican border and what have you. So these influences and these tactical positions and forces are basically in place, and they have been. So doesn't take much, stretch of the imagination to say they could just come over here in the event of war, which we're at right now. Though it's not technically the U.S. specifically itself against Russia or what will happen. And like I said, all these other countries just itching for the opportunity to come here and attack. Now, if things develop with the stock markets and the finances, and this starts to collapse, and there's no food, and this is developing, and the trucker situation, what's going to happen supposedly this weekend, coming from the west all the way across the country to D.C., and they're supposed to bottleneck and surround D.C., and they're supposedly shutting down the roads and, bolting down, batting down the hatches right around the White House there, sending in National Guard or whatever to sort of keep the peace again. So we have to see what happens with that, how that develops, and what might take place. Gas prices, now they're saying, could be $5, $6, or $7 per gallon, because this has taken place here now. It's a lot to do with also gas and oil and petrol and so forth coming into the issue here again in with the world, commodities, resources, along again with the stock markets, that there just seems to they're tanking, basically slowly tanking, but we don't know how bad that really is or could be, because it seems like they have the capability or the rules, or what they do is they stop trading or whatever, they let it cool down, or then whatever, the Fed could throw money, into the situation if it was really dire to prop things up. So, I mean, it's like it could be a slow collapse, because I guess just about all that is run by AI, by computers, by automated selling. And when certain points are reached, the switches, I should say like a trip switch. In other words, they shut down trading or halt trading if it starts plummeting too much, to let it recover, and not let it drop all at once, to hit a bottomless pit all at once at the same time in one day or whatever. And of course, what I didn't even mention in the last video is the V, what's going on with all the ramifications of what this is producing in so many ways. And so, obviously this is a big part of it too, part of this whole thing, this whole part of the puzzle of everything I'm talking about at the same time going on here. And that's what that protest is, that truckers' protest against mandated poking. And so, but again, just like basically all of this, it's a put up, it's a put on. It really is. Although, of course, we all want our freedom, and it's good to stand up for that, obviously. But what's happening, I believe, is the same old story, just same thing. What's going on, I believe, with this Russia situation. Basically, I think they all know what's going on. They all not only know what's going on, they're it's being planned and has been planned together, and the outcome is already predetermined and known. The rest is just put out there, to be seen, to be shown, for news, for whatever. So mostly everyone wouldn't have an idea of really what's going on, have a clue deep down what's the real cause of all of this is. And another thing that came into my mind is that just before this attack, I think it was right before it, maybe moments or hours before it, there was a big, was it a UN meeting? Everyone was gathered together, the eyes of the world on this, and they had whoever it was, I'm sorry I don't remember who it was, a minister or something from Ukraine, and he gave like one of the last messages he was going to give, at the final moments here, sort of pleading for this not to take place and to come to senses and not have this happen, for Russia to concede and not go ahead with this insanity against them. But anyway, the title of the video and also the title, I don't know, was it the Wall Street Journal or something? It was a major outlet that the title of it was something like, this minister of Ukraine said at the last minute here he said that if Russia invades Ukraine, he said it will be the end of the world order as we know it. It will be the end of the world order as we know it. That made me think of the REM song. It keeps going through my mind here. It's the end of the world, and we know it. It's the end of the world, and we know it. It's the end of the world, and I know it, and I feel fine. But most significantly and important in that phrase is what he said. It's the end of the world order. It will be the end of the world order. So what happens if there's the end of the world order? There's a new one, okay? There's a new order, a new world order. So basically that's what that's saying in so many words. Not, it will be the end of the world order. And that's exactly what this is. I believe all that talk about February 22nd, 2022, all the twos and all the messaging of significance, importance of that day, I think that's when that happened. That's when basically the end of the old world order finally took place. Like an announcement, not publicly to the world, but I believe behind the scenes that's basically what happened. And then immediately now, this happened with Russia, And unless unless a major miracle takes place and suddenly things change miraculously and all their hearts totally change and stop this and have a change of heart, unless that happens, that's like really crazy to think that would happen suddenly like that. But unless it does, that this is what's happening, is the fulfillment of this new order of things. And I believe this started. It's on the way now. It opened. It was the opening of it, all right? Like the opening ceremony. And I really truly believe that the rapture is likely to happen. Really, it's going to happen. I believe any second here. I really do. I really do. Like that one person said on that video I mentioned before. He said that we could be out of here by the weekend. I don't even want to know or think what could develop and escalate by the weekend. I mean, it may be very minor right this moment, what has taken place earlier today and late tonight and now into the morning. I don't even know what's going on. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning, Thursday now. As they say, a lot could happen in a day, or a lot could happen in 2 days, and a lot could happen by this weekend. Who knows? By Sunday, we don't know what this beast will turn into, or could turn into, or if they're just going to sort of blow it off and calm it down and make it seem like, oh, it's okay, and make it seem like that for a while here. Or on the other hand, maybe not. Maybe it's going to just really escalate quickly. So I'm really curious about Israel's response and see what they're going to say. What could be happening toward and with Israel right now. Again, anything happens with Syria, and who knows, maybe other countries might provoke them here. Any of the other surrounding countries, there might be something that takes place. I don't know. Maybe there has been something in the works and planned by Israel that obviously they're not going to divulge it. So maybe Israel will feel that they're forced to take some kind of preemptive action that might take place here, maybe imminently or momentarily. I have no clue, though. That could be possible too, and that could ignite things, especially with Russia. Or we might be hearing reports, maybe any day here now, of something going on off the coasts of the U.S., and there always has been reports of that, of submarines or whatever, jets flying. So who knows, we might be seeing that even maybe on our soil, over our soil, in the air, whatever. Or who knows, reports of forces coming close offshore or whatever, or amassing and building on the borders, something like that. And of course, if there's a true final financial stock, everything collapse, then what's going to be left here. And with food, you really don't want to think about that. And then if you add invasion on top of the equation, that's not a far stretch either. And what's happening right this moment, that could develop out of all of this. Again, with the restrictions of the I don't know what to call it. That's why I could call it a lot of names. The illness, let's call it that. The supposed illness going on. And of course, not to forget, I almost did the same thing going on in Canada. With all of that, and fines and restrictions and a big mess up there. So it's like everything is heading into a mess and is a mess. And it's the perfect formula for chaos. you know, and some kind of invasion or takeover. And last but not least, another ace in the hole is possibly with La Palma. And of course, if that happened, I mean, then forget it, you know. And there's a lot of indication that that's going to be a main part of this, very likely. Also, to usher this new order in, you know, all at once. Basically, what was of the U.S. will be no more if that all of these things, you know, take place. And that island is just sitting there like a sitting duck that can be used for such a purpose at anyone's whim, at any moment, at any precise time, to cause that to happen, and to cause a break off, and then within 7 to 9 hours or so, it would inundate the entire eastern United States, and also of the Gulf area, the southern states also, and spread throughout the whole Atlantic, through all the countries and all the shores. I guess I said what I had to say. Basically, can't really think of too much more to say. Going through this very, you know, not saying too much all at once, sort of, I don't know, just relaxing here for a moment. But it really looks like the moment is here for Jesus to appear. It really does. And that's what I'm waiting for. Really, that's what I'm waiting for. And, you know, obviously the biggest threat is something nuclear could start happening. So, okay, I've winded myself here, and now it's exactly to the T, 3 o'clock in the morning on February 24th, 22, Thursday. Again, I'm on the East Coast here in New Jersey. So I will load this, probably put it up a little later by 4 a.m. Eastern time, and then whenever I get up tomorrow, I'll see what the news is or what's happening. It seems like, I don't know, normally when something like this happens suddenly, that like the next day or two or whatever, after a while, it might seem to just like, or seem to at least stop or calm down, and then there's a reevaluation, a reassessment, and talk, and pleading, and going back and forth in diplomacy to try to stop the continuation of it, you know. But, you know, we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens with the stock market in the next few days here. Especially, fortunately, it'll be the weekend, so, you know, there's only 2 more trading days left, and then there could be a calming down, or, you know, in other words, it could wait. If there's going to be a collapse or whatever, it's going to sort of be in between time, a pause. So it's going to be a big week, a big end of this week, and a big weekend for sure in so many different ways. We'll just see. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if we're going to be gone from here. So that could happen too, very shortly in all of this. Okay, I'm going to go, and I'm going to load this, and I don't know. We'll see what happens, and if I'm going to come back and report on it again. So we shall see. I don't know. There might even been larger developments since I even started making this video in the last few hours. So I'll have to check that out. Okay, see you later. That's it for now.